Apologies for our late start. We had some technical issues here at the beginning, but we should be all okay now. Welcome to tonight's meeting of Burnside Council, being held in the Civic Centre, our temporary meeting location that allows for appropriate social distancing. Apologies. Welcome to those who are viewing via live stream, and I remind them that the agenda can be located on the Council's website. You should now actually be able to see it. Firstly, a reminder that the usual meeting etiquette and protocols apply in addition to mandated procedural meeting requirements. You'll be able to see the minutes in progress on your individual screens via the Zoom link sent to you today. We will be using show of hands to indicate your desire to withdraw an item, to gain my attention or to speak. I ask you to raise your hand high so that I can see it for voting as well. Our CEO will support me in identifying the order of speaking and to ensure fairness and equity for all. It will be appreciated by all here and by those viewing from home that you speak clearly and towards the microphones that are now 3 of them are situated in the centre there, and only when asked or required to do so. Remembering that your comments and remarks may be heard when you are not officially debating, and so long as it doesn't rain, hopefully all will be heard. Please show appropriate etiquette and respect for each speaker. For your information, toilets are located in the corridor at the rear of the lounge, and in the case of a fire or other emergency, you're asked to follow instructions from council staff. So now I'll ask you to stand. We acknowledge the land that we meet on today is the traditional land of the Kaurna people, and that we respect their spiritual relationship with their country. We also acknowledge the Kaurna people as the custodians of the Adelaide region, and that their cultural and heritage beliefs are still important to Kaurna people today. We also pay respect to the cultural authority of Aboriginal people visiting and attending from other areas of South Australia and Australia. On behalf of the City of Burnside, I gratefully acknowledge and pay respect to those who have sacrificed their lives for this country and its people. We pray for understanding and guidance in our debate, as we make decisions that will impact on the lives of all who reside, study, work in or visit the City of Burnside. Grant us wisdom as we serve our community. Thank you. Please be seated. There are no apologies. Is there anyone who wishes to identify any conflict of interest? Councillor Carbone.
Thank you, Worship. Not a conflict of interest, just a perceived interest, and that is with item 13.3. I do know the preferred candidate personally, so I thought I'd just declare that. But I will be, it's not a conflict, so I will be staying and voting.
Okay, thank you very much. There's no one with leave of absence. Confirmation of minutes. Is anyone willing to move that minutes be received? Thank you, Councillor Davis. Seconded, Councillor Piggott. All those in favour? Carried. There are no deputations this evening. There is a petition to be received from residents in Burdale Street, Linden Park. Councillor
Yes,
Hubel, you will move it?
Yeah, I actually have a alternate motion.
Okay.
Bear with me.
No, the motion's not now. That's just the
That's
just receive. Yeah, this is just receiving the petition. So if you move to receive the petition, or we don't have to.
No, we do the motion.
We do the motion as well.
Yes.
Yes, sorry, you're withdrawing.
We do that now or after?
No, we'll do it now.
Okay. It's all right. Just wait for that to come up, Rob. Thank you. All right, so I'll read this one out. Council receives a notice of petition. Number 2, conducts traffic surveys in both the northern and southern sections of Burdale Street over a period of 1 week. And 3, prepares a report taking into account the results of the survey, outlining all suitable traffic calming and diversion measures to prevent the use of suburban residential streets in Linden Park being utilised by motorists to bypass the Devereux Road, Greenville Road junction. And 4, corresponds with the head petitioner and signatories to advise of Council's consideration of the petition and this resolution. So this is looking into this issue in a bit more depth. Look, I think the report that we got attached to the petition in the papers Did look at a left-hand turn ban from Devereux into Hood, with the, with being mindful that, that would prevent Devereux Road traffic not going to Hood, means they wouldn't go into Burdale. That we think that the issue is a bit deeper than peak hour traffic, and that's reported to us from the residents there. So what I'm hoping we can do is look into things with a little bit more detail than we previously have, looking at both ends of the street, and particularly I'm asking the administration to turn their mind to traffic calming as well as diversion measures, preventing the use of all suburban residential streets in Linden Park being utilised. So this is really a attack on rat running in general, as opposed to looking at this one specific site. So I suspect actually, improvements may very well lie on Devereux Road itself at the intersection. The light sequencing, the slip laning will all have something to do with it. And look, if there are physical traffic calming to be put into Laurel Avenue, Bedale Avenue, working their way down, I think that would probably be last resort. But I'm really curious to see what a more thorough, holistic look into this would show us. So I seek your support.
Before I ask for a second, do you have a timeline on when you would like this report by that could be proposed as part, because we like to usually have a.
Well, that's not specified, but if
by June or next year, I mean, what, would you prefer to have a deadline or some sort of guidance?
Yes, through Madam Mayor, I'd actually prefer not to limit by these ones.
Okay, that's
the
fine.
undertaking I'll give is that we'll undertake it as soon as possible, but I don't have complexity for nuances till we get into it. So we'll aim to bring it back as soon as practicable.
Okay.
But I prefer to constrain.
That's fine, because there's two different issues there. One's the traffic survey of the street, the other one is the bigger report.
Yeah.
Right, we have a seconder, please. Councillor Jones, do you wish to speak?
Just briefly, Mayor. I commend this motion of Councillor Hubels. There's definite problems that are happening 24 hours a day of dangerous driving down the streets. It's not just a peak hour problem. There have been a couple of cars that have been struck by passing cars, a bit like last fortnight we had Hallett Road. At least it's not 25 cars, it's only 2 cars. But one was total write-off, which, given that street is supposed to be 50, you wonder how fast you were going to write off a parked car. So, yeah, I think this is a good motion. Let's do some further investigation. It was notable that the petition was signed by pretty much everybody who lives in Burdale Avenue, north of Hood Street. So this is not just a case of one resident being unhappy. There's a street pull. So I hope you'll all support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Daly.
Thank you, Worship. I had a question. As Councillor Harvey's mentioned, we had Hallett Road last week. We've got a whole lot of issues in Beulah Park in particular. There's issues in Turak Gardens. Where does all of this fit, and it's not negating this issue at all, in doing our whole of Burnside traffic audit and traffic management plan?
Through Madam Mayor, I'll hand over to Mr. Cant, but essentially it was the same response. I think.
Sorry, I can't hear.
I'll hand over to Mr. Cant. Essentially, it was the same response we had at the last meeting, in that they will all interrelate, and ultimately, whatever is implemented here will find its way into the strategy. It is simply just allowing us some time to put that strategy together. But I'll hand over to Mr. Cant.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris.
Great.
That's quite loud, isn't it? I don't think I can say much better than that. There's actually going to be an information document coming to you shortly with respect to the timing and the process of developing the master plan, the city master plan. As Chris said, it will incorporate issues such as this, but that doesn't mean that you need to stop doing business just now when you feel the need to tackle it just now. We'll just incorporate it into our plan later on.
Thank you. Just to follow up. So that will look at speed, traffic volumes, cut-through traffic, schools, particular issues around schools and aged care facilities, perhaps.
Through Madam Mayor, it's designed to be a holistic document. So we will be trying to encapsulate all the known issues. I can't say that it's going to deal with every issue that arises, but we will. There are some of those you just listed that we are aware of, and we will attempt to incorporate them in this document.
Thanks. I'll speak to this, if I may. Yes, I support Councillor Hughes' motion. There are huge volumes of traffic that come down Devereux Road. A lot of them then cross at those lights at that junction and go down to Tusmore Avenue. And there seems to be a huge parade of parents dropping their kids off and heading for Pembroke. So there's a huge volume of traffic that goes through there. The lights have recently changed, and that sequencing has recently changed, I've noticed. So, but I definitely support the fact that a left-hand turn any time from Devereux onto Greenhill Road would be a huge, it'd really free up a lot of that traffic and remove that risk of having to go through the back streets. So hopefully working with Dipty can help with that.
I wasn't sure, did you have your hand up, Councillor Turnbull, or was that in relation to your computer?
Councillor Piggott was first.
No, while Councillor Davey was asking questions, you actually had your hand up. But I wasn't sure if it was to get help from technology or to speak. So you technically did have your hand up before Councillor Piggott. So you have the right to change and go after if you wish, but you did have it.
Through there, just a very quick question. Is it possible to work with DPTI and alter the sequence of those lights? Because they're awful lights. You sit there and thinking, am I ever going to get going here? And if that sequence was made or like more equalised, probably would get less problems with people getting frustrated and turning up the road.
I think one of the issues, particularly at peak hour, is that with all the traffic arrangements, they favour the carriage of the most people, and the carriage of the most people is actually down Greenhill Road into the city. So we have to say there's lots of similar intersections around Burnside that are like that as well. But take your point. Now, Councillor Piggott.
Well, actually, it was good Councillor Turnbull went first, because that question was actually one I was going to ask as well. And I'm not. And could I ask it? I mean, the question was, what do we have available to us in regard to those intersections which hit a state road or whatever, in terms of getting anything changed if that proved to be an issue? Is it a brick wall when we hit Dipty, or is there things we might be able to negotiate?
Through Madam Mayor, I might hand that over to
No,
Mr. Cooper.
Thank you for the question. Through the Mayor, what I would envisage doing is, as part of this report, we'll come back with all of the different options and the sequencing of the lights and the discussions with Dipty with form part of that report. So, in answer to your question, yes, I think it is something we can do, and we'll report back accordingly.
Okay, although this was my second question. As I read the motion, it doesn't actually talk about the Devereux Road, Greenhill Road junction as an issue about anything we might have available to us in terms of sorting out the main junction.
Yes, through the Mayor, absolutely. It does refer to the motorist bypass in Devereux Road, Greenhill Road Junction, and that's absolutely fundamental to the process. Yeah.
Okay.
Councillor Davis.
Could I speak to it?
Oh, sorry.
That's right.
I thought you were just asking a question.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
Apologies.
That's fair enough. Look, I'll support it, although I'm a bit conflicted. I actually felt in all the years I've been here, generally a petition comes here and we all hold our hand up and accept it and send it off for the administration to come back with a report. This one seemed to make a much more proactive view, take a much more proactive view on life. It's done quite a bit of work on it. I actually feel that the original motion does have merit and we should be doing it anyway. It seems a no-brainer that during the support that. That we should do that. It put in a caveat that if it made a problem for the other end of Verdale Road, that they would, come up with another solution. What I think the Councillor Hubel is alluding to is that the core problem is the intersection with Green Hill Road and Devereux Road, and I'm sure that is the case. And I'm happy to support this based on the fact that we might get something, we might be able to do that. But it seems a shame, really. Petitioners actually got immediate action out of this almost. In the past, that's never been the case. So that's what I'll do is congratulate the administration on being so proactive and then support this motion and see what happens.
Councillor Davis. You had your hand up first, and then it's Councillor Hughes, and then it's Councillor Cornish.
Yeah, I think that's fine, and I also like that we're getting a further report on it. And I guess my question was, it says a week in there. Is that a necessary constraint, or can we just leave it up to the administration to do what they think is fit?
Madam Mayor, happy to hand that to Mr. Cooper.
Thank you. Through the Mayor, administration is happy with the week timeframe. That's our usual timeframe for undertaking traffic counts, and that will provide us with sufficient data to actually provide the report.
Yeah, no, I think that's good, and it's clear that the administration have input into it, and I think that this is looking for further information so we can actually get a report to make a fully informed decision, and I can definitely get on board with that. They've clearly they've got a problem in mind and a way to solve that problem.
Councillor Hughes.
I feel similar to Councillor Piggott in that the motion that was presented by staff actually came up with a potential solution, and we're then saying let's go and get a report. And to me, I actually think a trial is probably a good way to see whether it is a feasible solution. If it does solve the problem, then well done. But I'm not going to not support this motion, but I think the staff recommendation was fine as it was. I think, I could see an improvement to this motion in that we could do a baseline study, implement a trial, and then come back with a report that includes the report of that 6-month trial, as well as what other alternative solutions would be. And then at least we get to see some movement. I guess perhaps
Do an amendment.
I'd love to throw in an amendment if I can. Yeah, can I do that? If I'll get a seconder. Can we receive and note the petition, conduct the survey, so 1 and 2 stay. And then number 3 would become the old number. Sorry, I have to flick between the screens. Would become the old number 2 with install node left turn lanes for a trial period of 6 months. Is that a reasonable 6-month time period? And then, sorry, I flipped between, and then prepare a report taking into account of the survey. Yeah, essentially it would be all of those as is, but with the addition of doing something for 6 months and seeing whether there is an improvement.
Councillor Cornish, you were next to speak. Do you wish to, I'm not trying to prompt you, but do you wish to second this motion, or do you wish to speak on?
That's a variation.
Well, could be. I'm certainly happy to second the amendment that is put forward to the chamber, and I'll speak to it if I can.
Can I just ask, would we see this as a variation, or is this completely different?
I didn't.
Sorry,
it's the addition. It's basically the same motion, but with the addition of the putting in the 6 months, the no turn left sign.
So my recommendation will be to talk to the mover of the. Sorry,
It's still too different.
Yeah.
I think it is.
It can't be an amendment.
I'm happy
you
to move
can't
it. I'll
put
just
through.
move it as an amendment.
Okay. Officially
I
moved as
move it,
amendment.
I move the amendment.
Okay.
Too many H's. It's all right.
Now, councillor Cornish, you wish to second it, the amendment.
Yeah. So it can be an amendment or it can't be an amendment?
No, it's too different to be a
We're
variation.
treating it as an amendment.
Okay,
It's not a
If
variation.
it's close enough to be an amendment, it can be a variation.
No. Variations should be little things.
Well, amendments have to be
things.
little things as well.
So you-
You can't change the whole tone of the motion.
It's improving
My
on the
opinion,
amendment.
treat it as
an amendment.
As an amendment, right.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're treating it as an
Well,
amendment.
I'm happy to second the amendment and I'll speak to it. First off, it's become quite clear over the last two council meetings that traffic is probably going to be this city's #1 issue for the next year or two, even longer if we don't get a handle on it. So flagging with the CEO, potential expansion of that division coming forward. Number two, I certainly, I also thank the CEO and the administration for instead of having two reports come to this chamber, we've condensed with the one with an actual solution. They've done their homework. There's a report attached to the petition and a solution attached. And I really quite like that model of streamlining the process here. And third, for the sake of $80 to install a sign, to trial it out for 6 months, I think it's a really good idea to see if that works and we can come up with some other, explore some other solutions that might alleviate the problem, such as, you know, turning left on a red light at the Greenhill Devereux Road section there. So look, I'm very supportive of the amendment and I hope the chamber supports it as well.
Councillor Davis?
Good question. How do we know if it's worked?
The question is, how do we know? Administration need to answer the question.
Yeah, through Madam Mayor, my understanding would be that during that period, we would be undertaking collection of various types of data to understand the impact, whether that's speeds, vehicle numbers, the times, and also probably involving some surveying of the people that have put in this submission to understand whether they've noticed an impact of our actions. So various points of data.
So would you do, that's another question, would you do the survey first for a week and then do the signage and then do a monitor and then you have the data points, we can actually see what the impact would be. Is that right? Yes, that's right.
That was the intent.
Okay.
Do a baseline,
Yeah.
then change. We'll do it
So, if I may, Madam Mayor, taking Councillor Hughes' lead, yes, that's kind of baseline.
Just wanted to get that on record.
Yeah.
Councillor Hubel has a question.
Where's the problem?
Thank you. With the amended edition of point 3 here, does that mean that preparation of the report at point 4 would be, you know, held back until after that 6-month period?
I don't see that.
I just had a concern that with the addition of number 3, instead of getting a report, making a decision, doing something, is more or less delayed by this one-off. What we're saying here is we're only going to put those signs there for 6 months, and in 6 months we're going to take them out.
This is a good question.
But the in point 4, it says place a report taking into account the survey. So the traffic surveys would contribute to that report when they put it in for the week to survey the numbers and the traffic volumes and speeds.
Yeah, so that would be the surveys as part of number 3, as well as the surveys as part of number 2.
You need to actually specify if that's what you read it. You read it as this administration has to complete.
I'm just worried this is delaying a long-term solution.
If you make that,
Yeah.
I'd like to see clarification from the mover. I'd like to see clarification from the mover of the amendment.
I'm happy to, it doesn't have to be a 6-month period. It could be any period that the staff feel that they would get enough data to see that this change was making enough of an impact to then come back with a report.
So through Madam Mayor, Mr. Cooper, what's your thoughts on that?
Yes, thank you. Through the Mayor. The administration originally recommended this no left turn sign as a trial, and the intention was to use traffic count information taken before the sign goes up, and then a trial period. That trial period has to be long enough, obviously, to make sure it's a valid period of time to fully capture the impact of those no left turn signs. But what we would do during that trial period is also to take traffic counts both north and south in Verdale Avenue to make sure that we capture any traffic that might be cutting off earlier at Tamarack Road. And then, of course, comparing that data before and after. So I think we could probably do it quicker than 6 months. Maybe if we said 3 months, and then I think we need to do that before we came back with alternates. Otherwise, it would be a little bit
You
confusing.
can take that
Could
as a
I
variation.
be less prescriptive and just say for a trial period, and then that leaves it open to staff to make an assessment?
You happy with that, Councillor Cornish?
Yes.
Okay. Or a trial period then. Replace
What is it?
the 6 months. Councillor Lemon,
Yes, I have a question, if I may.
Yes. you haven't spoken either, so you can.
I have a question.
Okay.
The no left turn, which is a no left turn and it's 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. What are the consequences if people turn left? And how does that, if I ignore that every day, what's going to happen to me?
Nothing, unless the police happen to be sitting around the corner, or we are.
Through Madam Mayor, I'll just get Mr. Creed to give us a response to that.
Yes, certainly through the Mayor. In placing this new signage in the road, we'll obviously have to allow a period of time for residents to get used to it, but we would be liaising with SAFOL and ask them to particularly monitor that after a given embedding period of time, and any offending motorist would actually be expiated and turned left on the shoot.
Councillor Anstey? Yeah, acknowledging. Councillor
Yeah,
Anstey.
thank you, Mayor. I really agree with the community getting involved and, raising our awareness of various traffic issues in their area. It's a very bottom-up approach. We need that. You can't just do it all from the top down. But maybe I might be every fortnight putting up a motion about the need for a local area traffic management survey, for example, at the intersection of Kensington Road and Giles Street. Then I'll come around with another motion of notice about the intersection of Fullerton Road and Grant Avenue. I'll fill the agenda up for the next 2 years with this. So what I'm wanting to hear from the Mayor, through the Mayor, please, is that perhaps because we could spend many hours looking at details like this week after fortnight after fortnight, I'd like to know, Madam Mayor, that we could perhaps get an information report highlighting the hotspots in the city. Yes, we know the community have issues, top of Pallet Road, Greenhill Road, Mackenzie Road, and highlight, and I think that would probably be in the master plan. And then we could all be rest assured, the community can be rest assured that attention is being given to these places. Local area traffic management surveys will be conducted. This is pretty much what we're hearing about tonight. And we can expedite and prioritise these projects. I just feel that we've spent, it's very important that we do spend time on such matters that we hear from the community, but for efficiency and getting outcomes quickly, I'd like to see that approach happen. Can I have some comments, please?
Through Madam Mayor, I think in fairness to the community and the elected members, the last two situations have been brought to us by the community and so we're acting on those, which is correct. I guess my request to the elected members would be to allow us to bring back the report I've been alluding to.
Yep.
I am quite confident that it will deal with the various hotspots we have through the city. And the beauty is if we look at them in this holistic manner, we'll hopefully, ideally, get better outcomes rather than piecemeal. But I don't perceive we have an issue at the minute because the last two items were specific community concerns that they brought to us through the correct channels by petitions. So I would ask, I guess I'd ask council just to allow us to produce this plan, and then we can consider it going forward.
Councillor Davis, you have a question?
Yeah, one more. Wouldn't this also give us a study, like an in-depth study, to look at the effectiveness of these types of traffic control measures that could be then implemented in other areas should we need to?
That seems a reasonable question and suggestion, but it's being taken on board. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on the amendment? I put the amendment. All those in favour of the amended motion? Carried. Need to go back to the other one. We go back to the amendment. We have to go back to the amendment now. Right, that now becomes a motion. Now we vote on it. So those who support the amended motion?
Go back to them to speak.
Summing up.
Sorry?
Summing up.
It's not my motion.
No, it's not.
No, but you still get.
Yeah, it's your motion.
It is his
But
motion.
it's still yours. You actually do have opportunity to.
It's just
Sorry.
sorry.
Yes, you do.
All right,
Sorry.
thank you everyone for your discussions here.
You don't have to speak, but. you do.
There's some things I probably should mention in my opening. But the head petitioner, with the backing of the street, were not supportive of the left-hand turn off Deborah Road. They didn't feel that would resolve the issue. Also, one of the points they made was about speed, which no left-hand turn on the Hood Street doesn't address at all. So while we do have something immediately happening, what we are immediately doing is not something that the petitioners see as a solution in some way. But I think the fact that we're heading towards looking at the local region in a holistic view is quite a good thing. The speed and volume in any of these instances is always going to be a different issue. Speed limit is one thing. We have some data in that report we have in the agenda saying that we're not particularly seeing people breaking the speed limit, but on suburban streets, sometimes the speed limit is too fast, and that's certainly the case on Burdale. In terms of the volume, I think what the solution we need to do is to make heading into Linden Park off of Deborah Road an undesirable thing to do. And I think that if we put no left turn into Hood Street, people are just going to start turning left at Tamarack. Yep. Because they get onto Burdale that way. So we really do not think that this no left turn signage into Hood is really going to do much. We actually need our major roads. Deborah is not a major road, but major in terms of that it's a thoroughfare. They need to be the referred route. They need to be the preferred route for cars. And if they're not, then we're doing something wrong with our roads. We want cars on those roads. The only cars that should be on these back streets are the cars of the people that live on those streets. They should be for locals, they should be for cyclists, they should be for pedestrians. Our city is getting infilled seemingly whether we like it or not. We're getting people in built-up areas more and more complaining about off-street parking because we're filling up blocks. That is going to get worse and worse and worse. And one of our lasting issues is going to be traffic because we have more cars. So we need to make, getting on to these back streets in your car something you do not want to do. That's something for us to look at and the next council following us to look at. I think we, being able to leave your house and move around your neighbourhood without a car safely is a right. And there are a lot of people living in Verdale Avenue that do not feel overly safe at the moment. So I'm really looking forward to the report coming back, and I'm very, very curious to see the results of the signage as well.
Motion, those in favour? Those against? Carried. Right, we move on. There is no public question time, and questions on notice, I think, went through, the answers went through about 6:42 this afternoon. So you should have received all those. Next one is item 10 on page 17, motion on notice in relation to the London International High School. Councillor Carbone.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to start by saying how important the school is, the Glenunga International High School. Whenever I talk to a resident in Burnside, in Glenunga, a new resident, the school zone was one of the top 3 reasons they moved in, and especially the international purchases. Whenever we see an article about the Year 12 results, Glenunga International High School always gets a mention. They certainly punch well above their weight in the academic side of things. So it's in all of our interests in the ward to ensure this school maintains its good standing and thrives, because a good school means good property price growth. The downside of having such a fantastic school in this ward is the parking and traffic issues that have come with it over a number of years. I think it's safe to say that the local residents, they're getting slammed with the issues. It is something that has come about over time. I have heard stories about residents purchasing only 20 years ago when the school had 800 students. It now has 1,800 in only 20 years. The school is and is about to be big, really big. It is going to be the biggest public school in the state. And just to give you an idea of how big we're talking, it is the size of Pembroke and Seymour together. So that's how big we're talking. Looking at the study that has been done around traffic and parking and so forth, the school does very well, and Councillor Hubel will be pleased to hear this. They do very well when it comes to walking to school, riding to school, public transport. About 70% of all their students get to school and go home from school without the use of a car. So only 30% use a car. But that 30% is still a lot of people. That's 650 students who have been dropped off and picked up each day in the local streets. And it's becoming messy, and it's becoming complicated, and it's becoming unsafe. I've spent a couple of mornings and afternoons watching traffic with some of the local residents. In fact, on one particular day, we had about a dozen local residents and Dave Bissoni attend, just so we could sit back, watch it all unfold, and discuss options for moving forward. And those options are in the motion. In addition to students, we also have a lot of staff. So we're looking at 170 staff after redevelopment. And the problem I have with that number, 170, is when you have a look at the report, and when it comes to car parks, it talks about 154. So even before the school has started, we've already got all days parking in nearby streets. And then, of course, we've got Year 12 students. So the problem just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And it's the locals who no fault of their own are bearing the brunt of all this. Since the election, during the election and since the election, I've had pockets of residents
I think it's a bit too soon to do that, because with all the year sevens going off to other schools and in 2022, that'll make a difference to the number of children who are going to the primary school. So to me, that leave it out and do it later, after the impact of all these year sevens going to Galunga. It'll make a difference because we have many feeder schools in our area. Apart from that, I think it's a fabulous thing and very proactive. For once, going through to the future, 2 more years, get it right, get it going, get it moving. I just don't agree with number 7.
Councillor Piggott, are you seconding the amendment or have you got a question?
That's been seconded.
No.
No.
No, sorry. It's only been proposed as a
There was
variation.
an amendment by deleting item 7.
You proposing an amendment or asking for
I
variation?
agree with it, but I don't wish to second it because I wish to do something
Okay.
else.
Can we treat it as a variation?
Through Madam Mayor.
It's a deletion.
Is
Would
it-
you be willing, Councillor Carbone, to delete that
If it's
last
not an
one?
amendment, it's not a, if it's not an amendment, it can't be a variation.
Well, that's. See, I think it's an amendment, yeah.
Your worship, I'm torn because I'm happy for that to be removed, but then I'm worried people might vote it down because they've got issues in their ward that they might want addressed. So
And they can bring that as a separate motion.
Treat it as
Yeah.
an amendment and I need a
Deal with it.
seconder for the amendment. Otherwise, the amendment lapses.
Have a second.
No one is seconding the amendment?
No one seconded.
So therefore, that amendment the amendment lapses. Councillor Piggott, you wish to speak?
Yeah, a couple of questions, if I may. One was a procedural one. It frustrates me with such a complicated, well, actually, it's not complicated. We did have a system where some work was done in regard to providing a rationale in the minutes and finance. And I see finance listed there. I don't feel it's correct though, if we're proposing reviews of parking of all the schools in Burnside. I don't feel that would come at a real cost. So I was keen to get on all motions on notice. Or guts, I suppose, for us to actually.
I'll just defer to the mayor, to the CEO.
So through Madam Mayor, I've certainly taken on board since it was brought to my attention that all notice of motions should be supported by a number of categories. The practice is that the mover of the motion is asked to provide those details. I can't control whether they don't, but be aware that at this stage, they are the mover of the motion's opinion. They're not necessarily.
But that's not that, so the council, I guess a point of order or something, the council moved a motion that in every motion on notice, and this was because we didn't have information to make decisions, that the mover was meant to go to the administration and seek clarity on finance, legal, KPIs, a number of different criteria, so that when it came here, we at least had a basic information from the administration, and it would force the mover to go to the administration. That was my understanding of the actual
Can I call
motion.
a point of order?
Yes, I think-
Relevance to the debate at hand.
Yes. I was actually going to allow.
It's a valid point.
No, this is my point of order, is that we're not following our meeting procedures in that this motion doesn't have the criteria that needs to be in there for it to be a valid motion.
But I have to say that there has been inconsistency in that, and we have allowed a lot of those kind of motions in the past from different members without that.
No,
And
no.
I take your point about drawing attention to that, and I think it is necessary that we look at that and we are consistent with this from now on. But I don't think we can say, well, you know, there's probably at least a half a dozen motions in the past that have gone through without that, those.
The question was
Items.
aimed at being fixed in the future, not necessarily going to this way. As a follow-up question, which is very directly relevant. to
Yes.
the question, perhaps if I could ask that.
Yeah.
And that is, could I, through you, there, understand from administration what status, if any, this issue has in regard to what administration has done on it? What has there been work that administration has done in respect to this issue?
Through Madam Mayor, I'll make some preliminary thoughts before I hand over to Mr. Cooper. Essentially, we took guidance from the traffic study that the school commissioned. And from that study, it actually didn't provide or didn't focus on, for example, the one-way traffic solution at all. And we used that study to base our current standing that we weren't going to pursue consideration of a one-way street any further at this point. We certainly did engage with the school about assisting, as per our council policy, with the implementation of a crossing, was it, Mr. Cooper? An EMU crossing. And our policy provides that the council will contribute 50% of that. The school initially came back and said they weren't interested because they didn't have any money to contribute towards that. We have since gone back and advised them of the cost. We feel they may have thought it was going to cost a greater sum of money than it actually would. Bearing in mind they're doing a multi-million-dollar development just next to this road. And the other point I was going to make around that was, I guess I take a bit of umbrage that the state aren't taking any responsibility for this matter, and any solution ideally should be driven and funded or assisted with funding from the state. So at this point in time, we determined that we're taking no further action. That's not to say that, you know, obviously, if this, for example, gets up, of course we will take further action as the guidance of council.
But if it doesn't, you won't, as it currently stands.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Have you finished, Councillor?
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Lemon and then
Yes,
Councillor.
I have a couple of questions, if I may. One is, through you, the administration, what in the first point, it says in this that it's nil cost giving survey to be undertaken by internal officers. This is what it says under finance here. What is the cost to do point one in the first instance, if I may ask that? Is there a cost involved in doing the review?
Through Madam Mayor, I'll get Mr. Cooper to correct me, but I don't know that it costed what the cost would be to undertake this. Is that a correct?
An estimate would be fine.
Oh, Mr. Cooper?
Yes, through the Mayor, an estimate would be between 5 and 10K. The reason why it might be on the higher side on this one is that we might also want to include, specifically mentions the hub precinct, and obviously we've got peak demands in terms of use of that hub. So we want to make sure the review undertook all of that, the school and the hub. So approximately we estimate about 5 to 10K. and that would be outsourced to a third party simply because of availability of resources in-house.
Why does it say nil?
Councillor
My second part to that is, and what would be the cost of doing traffic surveys to all remaining schools?
Through the mayor. In total, I think we have 10 schools in the city of Burnside, if you include the 2 campuses for Pembroke. So as you're aware, we're currently doing some work with the campus, the senior campus for Pembroke. But that aside, if you look to do this review for all of those schools, you'd be looking at anything between $50,000 and $100,000.
Thank you.
Councillor Davis.
What? So the statement nil cost given the survey to be undertaken by internal officers is completely false.
Through Madam Mayor, if I can provide some insight to that statement. The opinion of the mover of this motion was that it could be performed by officers. That opinion is not shared by me. So if council had told me to do it with internal resources, of course I would have had to do it. My preferred option is that it be undertaken, if this is to occur, it be undertaken by external parties.
I have another question. What is the, so in my, there are clearly a number of schools in the city of Burnside that have similar issues. What would be the administration's approach? Would it be during to looking at providing solutions or getting council? What work can we do there to improve this? How would the administration tackle these issues?
Through Madam Mayor, can I pass that to Mr. Cooper? We've had a conversation about this.
Through the mayor. This is really part of our day job. We're continually working with schools, local residents as issues arise. It is a balance because we find that many of the kiss and drop zones, for example, the parents don't think they're long enough, but that obviously competes with parking availability for residents. Day by day, we can be having dialogues with particular schools. In the last couple of weeks, we had the need to talk to some residents near Seymour College. As you know, we're working with Pembroke as well, and obviously Glenunga International High and the Burnside Primary School. So we really deal with those as and when they come up. We do the monitoring and we provide recommendations through to council and through our budgeting process, any work that needs to be done. It's a changing situation. So all we're saying here is if this work was agreed to by the council, we would have to undertake the process through a third party. And we may have some economies of scale if we were to do all of them together, but then we'll have to work through any recommendations or actions out of that. And there may be further budgetary implications that aren't already part of our planned budget in the next year.
Another one. I think it's in point 3. There's findings from the GTA consultants May 2020 traffic impact assessment. Has that come to council? Is that something that's been distributed to us?
I got it because I asked for it today.
Councillor Hughes.
Sorry.
Through Madam Mayor, it was a report commissioned by the school that we managed to get a copy of. Certainly happy to provide that to elected members.
What does it say? Because we're voting on this report tonight, and we haven't read it, haven't been tabled as part of the motion. What does the report say for actually endorsing it?
Through Madam Mayor, can I just ask Mr. Cooper, I think he made some comments on this.
Certainly, thank you. We first received a copy of the GTA report as part of the request for consideration of a one-way street between Bevington Road and Windsor, which the report itself didn't support, but the school still held the view that it justified that one-way street and wanted council to actually engage with the local residents. We turned that down because we don't support that initiative. The same report was used as part of the development application for the 2 new developments at the school, one being the science and technology block and the second one being the gym. So you're probably all familiar that we, as council, had an opportunity to make comment on both of those development applications. The GTA report was specifically associated with the science and technology block and provided various comments around the parking spaces that were being made available. Our planning staff and traffic engineers are happy to support that on the basis that there is an overall improvement in the parking of something like 26 extra spaces if you consider the increase in the staff to what we've got at the moment. So in our view, that's going to be taking 26 cars off the road that are there at the moment. Clearly, there will be implications for all of the year 7s that are going to be dropped off and picked up, and that's something that's very much an unknown, and that's something we're saying we'll have to monitor very carefully once the development is in place. So, as Chris said, we're absolutely able to send that report out to all of the elected members so you can read the detail there, and it provides the rationale behind the assumptions that have been put into the development application.
Next person is Councillor Cornish. I've got a list.
Thank you, Mayor Monso. Yeah, I've got a question. Hopefully the mover might be able to include in the summing up. And I've just done the sums in terms of, there's an extra, 27 staff going to be there, and we're only asking for another 16 car parks at the school. And if there's an issue right now at the moment with regards to parking, should we not be inflating that number and asking for another 50 car parks from the school on their property? Like, if we're already down and they're going to increase and we're not asking them to actually, cover off enough parks for the teachers. So I'm wondering if the mover could actually, when he sums up, thank you.
Perhaps Mr. Cooper has a comment on that.
Thank you. Through them, and there's 143 FTEs. We don't know whether they're only part-time FTEs, but the measurements in terms of car parking requirements are based upon those whole FTE numbers. So at the moment, they're basically, if you exclude the disabled spaces, they're 42 car parks short. The increase in the teachers, the FTEs, is going from 143 up to 170. So 27 extra full-time FTEs joining the staff. In terms of car parking spaces, the development that's been approved adds another 53 car parking spaces to the existing situation. So for 27 extra staff, they're adding 53 extra car parks. That's a net improvement of the 26 over and above what they have at the moment, on the assumption that there's no increase in the number of year 12s. These are year 7s that are joining the school. So it should only be teachers parking that's taken into account at this stage. So they're the numbers that are being used in the report.
Is that your question?
I suppose now the summing up would be, if I could, is the 16 on top of the additional 53 that's in the development plan for the expansion. Sorry.
Mr. Cooper?
53.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Through the Mayor. I believe the 16 is the difference between 170 forecast full-time equivalents when the development's complete and the availability of the 154 car parks that will be in place when the development's finished. So that's the 16 difference.
We all know that a full-time equivalent could be 3 people who need 3 car parking spaces.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Lemon.
Yes, those calculations, I just want to confirm those calculations because I've just been I'm often a maths-free zone, so I just thought I'd start that as a disclaimer to start. What we've got right now is 101 car parks and 143 staff. Is that correct?
Correct.
So we've got a shortfall currently of 22.
42.
42, beg your pardon. Right. What we will have is 170 staff and extra 27.
Correct.
So aren't you adding those together? Isn't that? So how many parks do we actually need to cover everyone?
We don't know. We don't know because they're not FTEs. That's the other problem.
No. Just let's have one person answer on. I think Mr. Cooper to do that.
170 parks, what we want, what we need.
Well, actually, that's an interesting question through the Mayor. There are actually a couple of different ways that you can calculate what those car parking requirements should be. DEX has its own methodology, and our own development plan has one itself. If you were to follow the rules in our development plan, that would translate, when 170 staff are on board, to a requirement to have 500 car park spaces in total, which the traffic engineers in the GTA report and our own traffic staff and planning staff have agreed is excessive. In the G2A report, if you were to look at the parking requirements that the Education Department look at, they will be saying that for 170 staff, you need another 10% per employee, so another 18, which would total 188 parks. Now, we've got 154, so there is a shortfall against that. But what they're saying is there is an improvement of 26 over and above what we've got at the moment. So they're doing a direct comparison between what we've got now, which is a shortfall, and what we will have in the future, which is still a shortfall, but a smaller shortfall. If that makes sense.
Okay, so can I then say?
You asking a question?
Can I ask that in actual fact, I actually took 154 away from 188, which were two figures you gave to us just now about staffing, or about ideal. That means that we need an extra 34 parks, not an extra 16.
Through the Mayor, that's correct, against the DEX calculation of the parking spaces that's required.
So can I then confirm that DEX are actually saying in this report, that none of you have seen, some of us have seen, DEX are actually saying, this is what we recommend about parking rate, and it doesn't actually fulfil our formula, but it's better than what we've got right now. Would that be a correct way of assessing it?
Through the Mayor, I believe that is a correct way of assessing it.
So do you wish to speak, or?
I'll leave it for a moment, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Davey, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My questions are twofold. Firstly, my main question, some of the answers that have come up have partially answered this. So this huge increase in staffing levels and students takes place from the start of 2022.
Correct.
And have we?
If the building's finished in time.
Right. So have we had regular meetings with the Education Department about all these implications, on an ongoing basis? Do they do council the courtesy of?
Sure, Madam Mayor, just before I throw Mr. Cooper onto some of the little snippet, that I think it's fair to say that the department have deliberately sidestepped council in this process. The fact that they've changed the planning rules to now during COVID to mean that they no longer required, I think, even public consultation, didn't have to consult with us. We were referral authority on a component, and they've essentially fast-tracked this development. The answer is they have told us the bare minimum. In fact, I feel that the only reason we've got the involvement we had is because of our staff constantly hounding the department. I know Magnus was doing that only on a daily basis, because I was hounding Magnus on a daily basis to find some information. That's the only reason I feel that they've given us the level of information that we have received. I'll ask Mr. Cooper if there's anything more he wants to add to that.
Thank you, Mr. Cowley. Absolutely agree with what you're saying. It has been a priority for our staff to try and get information. We submitted our responses to the DAs just over a month ago. To date, we haven't had a response to those submissions, and we have not seen the final approved plans for the developments that have been approved, including the science and technology block, which I believe is due to start work at the end of this month. So no, we haven't.
So follow-up question.
No, hang on a minute.
So how do we know what the final configuration and numbers and everything will be if we haven't had the final DA clarify?
I can answer that in that I was at a meeting with Minister Gardner last Friday, 2 weeks ago, and he was extolling the praise of this massive development of Glenunga High or International High School and Norwood Morialto High School. Of course, you realise it's moving the entire campus plus year sevens, $40 million being spent there. I think it's something like 26 million or 30 million at Glenunga High. And while I'm not criticising either of the schools, my question of him was, well, what about the traffic? And he said, that would be up to council to deal with.
Through Mayor, I'll just ask I think the specific question was how do we know the final numbers? I think it's fair to say that the numbers of students and numbers of teachers won't change regardless of the machinations in terms of building design, location, footprint, overlooking, etc. So at this point, we are, as a council, from a planning perspective, are concerning ourselves with inputting to try and protect our community from negative planning, building planning outcomes. But the numbers we are dealing with here, I think we can treat as being fairly rigid and able to be relied upon.
Certainly they were actually the numbers that were quoted by John Gardner 2 weeks ago.
Thank you. And one final question relates to funding. Is there any likelihood that there's funding available for if there's this cavalier attitude to council to just fix anything that they put in place? Is there any realistic likelihood that we'll be able to seek any funding to help with our traffic and parking management?
Through Madam Mayor, I think you all know what I'm going to say. The schools have always had a long-standing policy about where their responsibilities start and end, and they are very clear in their policy that it ends at the school fence, basically. Therefore, I think our ability to source funding will be very limited. Not to say we won't try, but I believe it will be.
Right, next person on my list is Councillor Henschke.
Thank you, Mayor.
And I've got 3 others still coming off my list.
A quick question. Motion item 5. 16 reads an additional 16 car parks for staff. And is the school providing parking for students that are of driving age? Because I see that as a growing congestion issue.
Through Madam Mayor, my understanding is that school policy is not to provide on-site parking.
Right.
That's government education.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'm thinking big picture. Now with the next, the flavour of this year, next year, we have COVID, we drive out, well, I drive 2 children to school now, and I'm sure a lot of other parents are doing a lot of driving and dropping off. And I was wanting to know whether there is some thought that this council can have in regards to providing drop-off zones that are flexible in this climate and created for the purpose of families taking their children to school, dropping them off and having to go to work. So these are drop-off zones because we're in this pandemic. It makes it easier for these people to drop children off, and perhaps the children have to walk a bit further, but they're temporary. Is there any scope in our current policies where we can consider this, have this flexibility for our community?
Through Madam, can I just throw to Mr. Cooper just to give us a little bit of commentary on the current kiss and drop zones and how they relate to potentially Councillor Henschke's thoughts?
Thank you. Through the Mayor, as I alluded to earlier, the kiss and drops zones and the size of them is a particular area of contention and concern for parents. But there is a balance between the needs of the local residents too, in terms of their parking, their ability to park in the streets. So where we can, we're certainly happy to work with the schools and the local residents to extend those. And in some instances, we've been able to do that successfully. We also have, as you're probably aware, because of the COVID situation, we did have a bit of a amnesty in terms of our expiations and our rangers. However, that comes at a risk really of not doing the right things in terms of traffic management around schools. So we are very conscious about safety and the importance of making sure that the school children and indeed parents dropping them off are safe. So whilst we do what we can, it's a balancing act, and it's not clear cut, I'm afraid.
Right, next person is Councillor Dawes.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm glad you mentioned Norwood High School. I would have been supportive of number one only, I have to say, if you included Norwood High School as well. The state high schools are going to be mainly affected by year sevens coming into the high schools. I do understand the reasons for Councillor Carbone's proactivity, but I think it's too proactive, if I can say that. I would say early 2021, and we do undertake a parking traffic management review of both Wollonga High and the Hub Precinct, plus Norwood High. The only advantage Norwood High has is that the parade and Penfold Road do adjoin that high school, so it's Wollonga High is in amongst the suburbs, got narrower streets, etc. But Norwood High, the Mayor's right, a $40 million extra on infrastructure, one campus. So I have to vote against this because I think it's too wide-ranging, and we should be looking at early 2021 to undertake this review of the state senior high schools in our city. Thank you.
Councillor Piggott.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, you should have been too proactive. Because I too, I feel the way forward here. I see where Councillor Carbone's going, and it clearly is an issue that needs addressing, and it's going to get worse in 2022. But I feel that the motion just and the questions have sort of shown that. We've got 16 parks over here and 37 over here. It is very much an issue. I feel that the council should see a report, have 5 days to pore over it, ask questions about it before actually setting loose the solution. I don't think it works as a motion on notice, certainly not without the rationale and the details underneath it. So from that point of view, while I support the sentiment, I don't feel that I'm convinced about the solution in the first 6 points, and then I don't feel we should necessarily extend it to every school in Burnside. So what I do suggest, though, is I feel we should actually ask for a report in regard to the parking and traffic issues that can then get perhaps all of us the benefit of the GTA report and anything else that actually council may have. I also feel that we should be engaging however we can do with the school and DEX in regard to this issue and getting them in the same team, if you like, to sort it out rather than the situation that the minister seemed to voice. And from that point of view, I feel perhaps that David Pisoni, who I assume is the local member there, and is good enough to come and watch traffic, perhaps we should engage him to actually facilitate that process. If it's difficult to get the school to the table, then perhaps David Pisoni may be able to do that.
Yeah.
So what I suggest is, I feel that the motion in its current form, I've just been told we are, so that's good. It's going to be very straightforward. In its current form, I don't feel we can support it. I don't think I can support it, because we would like the support it, because I don't understand enough about it to be convinced that the solution proposed is right. And it seems not actually to necessarily address everything, and then extending it to every place in Burnside is inappropriate. I do think an alternative motion that did actually have a report come back about Wollonga specifically. Councillor Dawes can bring Norwood at a later date, perhaps, but Wollonga clearly has been flagged as an issue before they changed the year sevens, really. I think it is right that this council gets on the front foot with it and uses everything it can do to solve it. So I won't be voting for it. If allowed, I will pitch an alternative.
Councillor Lemon, your next
Thank you.
question or comment?
No, I'll speak to it now.
Okay.
I too am speaking against this motion for very similar reasons that have come around the room already. It's not just, and And partly, I live on the Strange Street, which is the same street as the high school. I've lived on that current site since 1979. So I understand very well what the issues on that street are. Lived there since 1979. And at the turn of the millennium, there were 800 students at that school. Now there's 1,800 students at that school. And it is bigger than the parking and the drop-off and the traffic issues. And it is an issue for the whole of the city, I believe. Because when you read this GTA report, what you see in this is almost 50% of students at Glenunga High School are out of zone.
Yeah.
So what that says to me is you can halve the current 1,800 students. So that's my first issue. My second issue is every school in our city is at capacity. That is primary schools and that is high schools also. I'd remind you that the Botanic High School that was built on Lot 14 and opened recently, the last year or the year before, within the last couple of years, 5 minutes after it opened, they had to change the zoning because it was full. So what these things are telling me is this. You can throw millions of dollars at existing high schools. What you have to do is you need to look at where the gaps are. Norwood is not going to take, where are you going to go when you spent your $40 million and you've still got more students? $32 million in Glenunga High School. On the weekend, I did a little walk around. There's 227 dwellings directly impacted by that school. And when I say directly impacted, on either street and up the little side streets to the next block, directly impacted 227 dwellings. This school, which is the largest high school in South Australia, is in the middle of a residential area. It has no green space. If we didn't rent the Marrow Ovals so that the kiddies had somewhere to sit at lunchtime, they'd actually be leaning against hot concrete walls because that's what this school has got. So, the school is very successful, which is why everyone wants to send their kids there. But it does have a zoning issue. What I'd like to know is what the state government is doing in terms of a strategy to have those children that belong in the zone go to that school and provide decent schooling to those children that are coming from outside the zone. Is it that the Adelaide Hills need another high school? Or are they coming down the freeway and getting off and coming out of zone, coming to our school? And I won't vote for this motion because I think I'll have an alternative motion. I think what we need to do is, as Grant said, as Councillor Piggott said, we need a report, but we also need a workshop. We need to really look at this issue. We need to actually get administration to go and have a look at things like how many students come into our city, to our schools, out of zone. How do we lobby the state government to make that stop? Because I don't see why our residents should actually have amenity destroyed because somebody that lives in North Adelaide wants to send their kids to a public school that's got good outcomes. Not good enough, in my opinion. And these are the issues that we should be looking at. Not just the parking. The parking is an issue. The parking and the traffic is an issue. But it is one issue of many issues. And if we let this go and just fix the parking right now, what's going to happen in 3 years' time when we get another 200 students? And in 5 years' time when we get another 500 students? This is not sustainable. We need to look at it now. We need to look at a strategic way of actually getting these numbers down and getting the state government to take responsibility for providing the infrastructure that needs to be provided to the students that currently don't have local high schools. Not the people on my street that should be suffering because the state government hasn't got it right. Build another Botanic High School. So I will have an alternative motion. I don't believe this actually addresses the issues.
Just to add to that, we have students who are live in Burnside and who are in the zone for Glenunga High and they cannot get into the school. I have referred some to Vicky Chapman and she has not been able to help them either.
Sometimes. There you go.
Okay, next person is Councillor Hubble.
Thank you, Your Worship. This has really become a much deeper and bigger debate than I potentially thought it was going to, and I thank the chamber for that. A couple of things that I wanted to, I guess, point out regarding my thinking. I particularly do feel quite strongly about number 7. Although I do feel that looking at review of all the schools should be more the primary objective. And we're not just talking about Nord Morialta as well. We're talking about Seymour, Pembroke, St. Peter's. They are going to get year 7s from public primary schools.
Most of them are already there.
So this change to year 7 becoming high school is not an issue for us just in terms of the department schools. Because these independent schools are going to be getting their kids from public schools earlier. There's a huge amount of kids go public primary and then they go independent schools in high school. So instead of the movement happening in year 8, the movement's happening in year 7. So there's going to be increased kids at every high school, not just department schools. What I'm hearing about the costings, the approximate costings, given that, has swayed my thinking on this. My understanding of what I heard, please correct me if I'm wrong, is that we're looking at anything between $55,000 and $110,000, incorporating number 1 and number 7. And without a much more in-depth report, I find I cannot be supporting this. My experience also, I work in education in schools at an administrative and a parent level and as an employee, that there's not much that parking restrictions are going to do for the safety of children that aren't going to be solved by a ranger standing at the front gate every morning and every afternoon. So regardless of what the rules are, parents will behave badly, they will drive badly, they will park illegally, they will cross roads illegally, because that's what's going to be. And that is my experience at several schools across different states in different sectors as a parent and at administration level and as an employee. So that it is more than looking at parking, because children's safety should be what we're concerned about. Parking comes second. Inconvenience comes second. We looked at Hallett Road last meeting. Majority of these accidents that we were talking about come from cars hitting stationary vehicles, come from rear-end collisions. This is inattention in school areas. That needs to be what our concern is. And I don't feel that this motion, while I support where it's coming from, I don't necessarily disagree with it, but I think given what's really come out tonight, I think we really do need a more in-depth look at how the city of Burnside is holistically going to be adapting to the increase in year 7 numbers in 2022.
Is there anyone else who has not spoken who wishes to speak? Councillor Davis? Only ask questions. Thank you. Go.
Thank you. I think that we all have a lot of insight, I think, into different problems within our areas. And I think you're very right in terms of we're looking at, we're talking earlier tonight about a holistic traffic management plan and the way that schools, they're those hot centres or those hubs traffic, everyone's trying to get in there and get out. And I think as part of that type of process, we should be incorporating that overarching strategic view. I also think that, yes, this school in particular has a problem, and so do many others, such as Councillor Dawes said, but I think that we focus on this one at a time because I think we're focused here. I think that we should move an alternative motion, essentially that we do get a report and that we have a workshop. And we can talk about what other schools have these problems and potentially solutions that we have, because that's what we all are. We are solution focused, but I'm not so sure that we're even understanding or agreed upon our problem that we're trying to solve. And we're definitely not aware of what our solution should be. And this motion, to my mind, is a band-aid for a bullet hole. And we're missing out on a lot of opportunities for us to go down that path. And we shouldn't, what I don't like is we go off and do little bits of things piecemeal rather than sitting down and properly considering a solution to a problem. We shouldn't be proactive. We should develop a plan where we have an identified problem and we have a solution to fix it, not being proactive where we don't currently have a problem, we don't know what it will be, and we don't have a solution. That's what I think that we should be looking at this as. And in terms of all those schools, we can have that discussion. So what I think that Councillor Piggott and also Councillor Lemon was talking about, if I'm picking up their gist, would be to move a motion along the lines of that we have a workshop where councillors and the administration can discuss these issues. We can get told about some of these reports that I didn't know about. And secondly, we can discuss them and what some of the solutions might be. And then we can go and get a report and come back to council as a holistic view and understanding which schools are moving to that Year 7 regime now, which ones are moving there later, what are the impacts being. But really importantly, I think that council can play a role in terms of lobbying the state government or having an input into this. We have to deal with the problems as a result of these changes, and we have to deal with the problems of increased infill. And we should be providing those comments to the state government, but when they're looking at their education reforms and where they put new schools, and I think they probably do need a new school in this area. And that's what they should be looking at. We should have a feedback on that saying, well, here is all the traffic data. And if they're saying, well, it's your problem, well, it's actually their problem. But we need to get the data together and we need to come up with a strategy and push it back onto them and say, we can't cope anymore. There are already problems. It's going to get worse. You need to factor this into your planning. And we haven't done that at the moment. And what I absolutely hate is going off half-cocked, going down small things, fixing, putting band-aids over stuff. And what it does is it takes away the sting of it for a little bit. I don't like doing that. I like finding, looking at the problem, clearly identifying it, everyone having on the same page, and then developing a solution. And that's what I think we should do here. Have a workshop, get a report, and come up with a strategic plan of how we can solve this problem. And that's, I'll be voting against this. I mean, I'll say the comment that how does it come to be that we have a line in here saying that the finance will be $0? Like, I'm going to rely on this motion. I'm going to rely on the data in my reports. How can it be that we have that line in there? To my mind, if you're going to bring a motion like this, speak with the administration. That clearly didn't happen. Make sure that they're on board, make sure it's within their capabilities, and understand the costs and tell the council what the costs are going to be, because I find it very, very difficult to come to council thinking that it's going to be $0 cost and then finding out it's going to be $120,000 and the administration don't support how that's arrived at. I'm really disappointed about that. I'll make that note. But I think we do have a solution. It's something we can all agree on. There is a problem coming, and we can work on that together. And that's what I think we should do, is to move a motion without notice after this fails.
Right. Councillor Carbone.
Thank you, Worship. You think I'll be used to this sort of feeling, but I'm not. But look, just summing up, I just want to go through a couple of things that were mentioned tonight, just to, of course, end my disappointment that we're not being proactive once again on something. In terms of the performer and the template, in terms of finance and legal, I'm sorry I stuffed up. I forgot to mention it. I didn't realise that's going to make or break this motion, but for some reason it has. In terms of the cost, look, you know, I'm a pretty simple kind of guy. And what we did with the residents over a couple of mornings is just watching, it's amazing the amount of information you can get from just people watching the situation. And a lot of this stuff, I believe, to rectify the situation is easy. And I honestly thought just having staff out there and just watching and just understanding and talking to the only about 10 minutes. And I would have thought that would have been enough. Don't need consultants, don't need engineers. Spend. In terms of the independent reports, I went through the key findings. It was very light on. It touched about where numbers and how many people drive and so forth. This report was all about going deeper. You know, in terms of the one-way thing, look, you know, the school is very keen on that. The residents who I spoke to were actually very keen on that, so that's why I thought we'd just do a survey. Look, it gives me great disappointment. I'm going to actually have to go back to the 20 or 30 residents that have been emailing me and calling me about this and said that the council voted it down. It was being a lobby for another school. And they're going to say, you've got to be kidding me. And even if that does happen, that's going to be 10 years away. So, you know, that's just silly talk. That's just silly talk. You know, we're going to lobby the state government to do another school to get the numbers down and so forth. That's not going to happen, you know, anytime soon. Let's get real about this. You know, all schools are going to grow, so it's going to be a problem throughout. Yes, all schools are going to grow, but this one's going to grow a lot more because the school is going to grow, and it's not just year 7s. Just remember, that number is 400 extra students. That's picking up a Rose Park Primary and putting it down at Glenunga. That's how big it's going to be, like that. So we need to be proactive. It's going to happen. And I'd like to know what your attitudes are going to be when the emails start coming through in 18 months saying, we've got a problem. Why didn't you do something 18 months ago? What are you going to say in reply? I'm very curious about that. That we don't want to be too proactive. We want to wait for it to be a problem and then be reactive. We're going to wait till 2021. Nothing's going to change. People are saying, oh, we need a report. We need to workshop this. What do you think this motion is calling for?
A letter.
A report.
Henry?
It's going to come back and tell us what we can do and what we can't do. That's what it's going to be. And there's nothing we can do to solve the problem. What an absolute cop-out. Doing nothing is somehow better than doing something. Very disappointing. In terms of the parking, because I was asked to comment, look, it's very simple. I'm not an engineer. I can just read numbers, okay? And the numbers are 170 staff, 154 car parks. It's as simple as that. Yes, I could have gone more, could have gone for the 34, which is recommended. I don't want to be too much. I thought I'd just go for 16 and just be conservative. Someone mentioned about COVID and how that's going to have an impact on more people driving to school. Even more of a reason to support this report. Just for once, just be proactive, really. We've got an issue. It's going to get worse. It's not complicated to work out what we can do. Just whatever.
Right, those in favour? Those against?
Division.
Lost? Those who voted in support, please stand. Councillor Carbone, Councillor Turnbull, Councillor Jones.
Julian, just
and
don't
Councillor
have a go at your co-councillor.
Carbone, Turnbull, Jones and Chitty.
Good.
And against? Dawes, Hubel, Cornish, Hughes, Davey, Piggott and Davis. I'm going to suggest that perhaps we do take a break now, if everyone is supportive of that. And if there is a motion without notice that is pending, then you have a bit of time to prepare something, because it can be accepted during motions without notice. Is that the will of the,
It helps, I'm ready to go.
Sorry?
No, look.
It's 9 o'clock, isn't it?
Well, it has to wait until the motion's without notice, councillor Piggott, so you would like to move, we have a break now?
Yeah.
Okay, so we start, and seconded councillor Dawes, all those in favour? Right, we resume at 5:29.
Can see.
Now we need to move on to questions without notice. Are there any questions without notice? Motions without notice, I have discussed with the potential two people who want to move a motion without notice, and have decided that I will not accept a motion without notice on the grounds that we haven't had any detail, we haven't had any report, there hasn't been any opportunity for that motion to go to administration so that they can provide us with information or data. But I have suggested that such a motion might be brought to the next council meeting when that time can be taken to find an appropriate motion that would, with the consultation with the administration to make sure that whatever's brought to us, we have the right sort of information. Okay, reports of officers. We can probably just go straight through these and we'll do them one at a time because we have to do them all. I need got 13.1, 13.2. They just have to be accepted, don't they? We've got to get a person for that one. We have to agree with that one. Just run them through one at a time. Okay. So nomination for a member of the Greater Adelaide Regional Council.
I'd have to nominate Mayor Monso.
I will accept that nomination.
Are we going to pull each? Are we talking about
I think we
pulling
should
out?
run all and start.
No, we're just going to go through them one at a time. Okay. There's only the 4 there. So, are there any further nominations?
I was going to second the nomination. Second
Okay.
Well, I'll move the motion 1 and 2, but insert Mayor Monso into number 2.
Do I have to leave the chair?
Only if you're getting
Can I move myself from the chair, please?
Yes.
Yes.
Really?
Does she?
You get paid for this?
Based on past practice.
But she's not voted in anyway because we're just putting her forward for then everyone else to nominate.
This is not a vote.
And it's when we
Just
get tied.
Oh, okay.
Oh, no, I was going to
We're not
move.
voting.
There's no one else who's moved anyone else. So,
Is there no other seconders so that I don't have to let it? Or?
no.
No.
I was going to move the motion 1 and 2 and then submit a nomination for Mayor Monso to the Local Government Association.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank
I'm
you.
happy to move
I'm
that.
happy to second.
Right. Thank you. Seconded. Those in favour? Thank you. Can I just say that I'd like to thank you for supporting me in this nomination. I have not nominated in the past, but this year the way they've structured Garup is quite different. The voting is quite different, and as I'm aware at this point in time, I believe all the other councils within the Eastern region are intending to put forward either their mayor or their CEO or an elected member as a potential representative for Garup. So the competition is going to be quite great. I've already received my first lobbying one from the city of Campbelltown. You have as well?
No, I lobbied for that. Remember, I
Stood last time.
I campaigned for this last time. Put yourself a week aside because there's a lot of people you have to lobby.
Oh, okay.
An email because
All right.
it's every council.
I think it's different this year that only the regions vote.
Oh, so it's all the regional councils.
Yeah, it'll only be the regional vote, but I am aware that Mayor of Walkerville standing, Deputy Mayor of Campbelltown standing, Mayor of Prospect standing. So basically, nearly everyone in ERA, plus of course Adelaide Hills, which was added to our region, even though they're not part of ERA. So, but I like to think that I will represent Burnside and at least have the opportunity to perhaps, if elected, make sure that Burnside's ideas, concerns and thoughts are accommodated in a way that they may not have been in the past.
Yeah.
I mean, in this current term.
Here's the key. Sorry.
So thank you.
Here's the key vote.
Pardon?
Is everyone nominating somebody? Is all vote for themselves?
Yes, we've already done the voting.
No.
Oh, sorry.
On Garup.
Beg the Lord, me.
Who else?
Adelaide Council.
Oh, for this area, at the moment, they're not official, but I am aware that the Mayor of Walkerville is going to stand, the Mayor of Prospect's going to stand, an elected member who's currently on Garup is going to stand, represent Northern Payneham and St Peters, and I believe Adelaide Hills. The Mayor will stand. She's currently on Jan Claire Wisdom is currently on Garup. And I believe Karen Redmond, who's on President of Garrick is probably going to stand for the, to replace Sam Telfer.
So who isn't running the nomination? Which council isn't running?
Unley is a question mark at the moment. I think
So
that's the
you're
only
lobbying
one.
So just lobby Unley.
So no one went Unley, give them a call.
Anyway, there's a whole new way of doing it, the elections, and this time, at least it's fairer in terms of all the regions will have the opportunity to be appointed to part of Garrick, whereas in the past, the south and the west have tended to be not have had the same opportunities as the east. Okay, thank you for that, and we'll move on to 13.2, which, and I'd seek somebody to withdraw that one. I know we just have to put it up. Okay, just report to be received. No? Officer's recommendation, but doesn't someone have to?
I'll do that one.
Yeah,
Someone has to move.
Oh, sorry, withdraw it for discussion. Okay, no, I meant to move it. Councillor Dawes moving, seconded by Councillor Lemon. Thank you very much. Those in favour? Carried. Really good to see Rob Gregory, our East Waste CEO, moving into that realm. Now, the next one is the independent member, presiding member of the council assessment panel.
I mean, if I may, Madam Mayor.
Yes.
Just prior to getting moving, I'd just like to, with the indulgence of the meeting, add a second part to this. Rob's about to put it up on the screen. And what it would do, just to allow us, should we get a vacancy during the year, to enable us to relook at the other candidates that put their names forward in this nomination, because they're all quality candidates. And it just saves us going back out to market again, if there's a vacancy that comes up.
Without, unexpectedly.
Yeah.
No, because what did he call?
No, I'll move
Presiding
it.
member.
Are you happy to move that,
Yeah.
Councillor Davis?
Without that.
No, with it.
I'll with
No,
it.
he's
Yeah.
saying
No,
without.
Oh, no, with the in the
I just want to keep
amendment.
it simple.
Yeah, let's keep it simple.
You'd rather just have the
Leave it out.
Go.
point one only.
Okay.
Leave it out.
Okay.
Yeah, I think go to Mark.
So as it is here.
Yep.
Yes.
I'll speak on that. Like some of these, like sometimes you get some really, really great people, and then sometimes not so great people. And no doubt we've got a number one spot, and I don't have confidence, and I don't have the knowledge about who else is on that thing. So yeah, that was it. That was the only thing, CEO. So, but a good idea, definitely.
All right, we had a mover and we have a seconder, Councillor Lemon. All those in favour? Carried. And I look forward to, or I will make sure that I'm present at the last final CAP meeting to thank Bill Chandler for the 8 years of service and to welcome in the following meeting the new chair, Carol Music.
Malevolence now.
Sorry? Music is the way you pronounce it. Music. Okay, the next one is the CEO report. I've got to go back to my agenda, sorry.
Page 41.
Minutes of the CEO recruitment performance appraisal, page 41.
For this.
Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Your Worship. I've got an amended motion to this, which you'll see up on your laptop. One, that the minutes of the CEO Recruitment Performance Appraisal and Remuneration Review Committee meeting held on the 3rd of August 2020 be received by Council. And two, that the CEO present a report to Council in December 2020 on progress with implementation of his performance plan, particularly his key performance indicators and key result areas during 2020. And I'm moving this way, particularly because I'm a bit disappointed that the situation is still a little bit fragmented, but I'll just read the terms of reference of the CEO appraisal, etc. committee, because I think there's a feeling that we've delegated responsibility to them. But the terms of reference of the committee, which I think it's important to reiterate, actually say that Council is responsible for the appointment of the CEO. This is part 7, and they're on the web if you need them. Council is responsible for the appointment of the CEO, for determining the CEO's performance plan, assessing the CEO's performance against the plan, and determining remuneration of the CEO. The CEO recruitment, performance appraisal and remuneration review committee's role is to advise the council on these matters, including at 7.1, performing the functions of a selection panel under section 98(4) of the Local Government Act, which they've done very well. 7.2, determining the performance plan of council CEO. 7.3, monitoring the performance of council CEO. And 7.4, reviewing the remuneration and conditions of employment of the CEO at 12 monthly intervals. So to go on and elaborate, the committee have completed a huge body of work to recruit a new CEO. They have worked really hard, and I'm acknowledging that. And this has culminated in the appointment of Chris Cowley, who commenced at Burnside in January 2020. So that's 8 months ago. I'm a bit disappointed we don't yet have a fully developed CEO performance plan at this stage. As we move to develop and finalise the CEO's performance plan, I believe this needs to reflect council's focus and objectives and how we'll measure these and his success, and the success of Burnside over the year, particularly the leadership he's demonstrated, which has been significant, and the organisational systems he initiates, oversees and implements. And as I said, we're 8 months into the year at this stage. I believe it's important that the CEO performance committee needs to develop the performance plan to include coverage of the following principal areas with measurable outcomes for each. So these include things like leadership and strategy, and that includes our new strategic plan, which we haven't yet finalised. That's still coming to us, I believe. Organisational capacity and performance, financial, prudential and risk management systems, innovation, sustainability and accountability to council and the community, and service delivery. So we need to have measurable targets against his performance plan. So as we move to the remainder of the year, and what has turned out to be a very challenging year indeed, in which he has shown extraordinary leadership, we need to formalise all of this, and we need to see the fully developed CEO performance plan with KPIs and KRAs implemented as soon as possible, so we can review this in December and then determine and negotiate any changes and what is appropriate remuneration for his anniversary, which is in January 2021. So that's the intent of my motion tonight, and I hope you'll support it.
Councillor Cornish?
I'm very happy to second this motion as it stands. However, I'd like, if I can get a variation through, it's not an amendment, that maybe in item 3, that the CEO performance review and remuneration committee review its terms of reference and bring back amendments. As I'm reading 14.2 of the terms of reference, says the committee's role is to, on an annual basis and in conjunction with the Chief Executive Officer, establish key performance indicators against which the performance review is to be conducted. The committee will seek input from council regarding the KPIs to be set for the CEO and will prepare the final performance plan with the CEO. So there's obviously a little bit of wordsmithing that needs to happen in terms of the clarity with the terms of reference, because a whole page gets into the actual how the performance KPIs are set, yet obviously the heading is sort of slightly different and worded. So that's the amendment that I think we need to have a look at the terms of reference for the CEO. It's probably due for a review anyway. It's 2018 was the last time it was reviewed, the terms of reference. So that's my variation if the mover would accept
I'm
that.
very happy to accept that, because I agree, yes, that's
How is it that Councillor Turnbull wasn't allowed a variation to Councillor Carbone's motion, but Councillor
That was an
Cornish is
omission,
allowed
whereas
to
this is an
vary?
addition.
It determines by the quantum.
Yeah,
How big of a change is it?
that was a massive change to delete that, because we're talking, well, in the end, we found out it was potentially between $50,000 and $100,000. involved in
But
that.
councillor Turnbull wasn't even allowed to discuss her variation until I'd seconded the motion.
He seconded it.
No, he didn't. He hasn't
He
seconded it.
spoke to
He
her.
proposed a variation.
No, I seconded it.
He's seconding it.
No.
And
he wasn't
includes, as
seconded.
him seconding, he's also.
Well, why couldn't councillor Turnbull do that?
She didn't want to.
She didn't do that.
She didn't want it.
She didn't want
She
to.
didn't ask him.
But they said no. If I could
No,
work it,
she's-
yeah.
Yeah, so we couldn't move the amendment.
It's
so-
fine.
I'll leave it to you.
Just provide clarity as I saw it. The difference was that Councillor Turnbull wasn't prepared to second the motion in its current form.
That's right.
I'm happy to second it in its current form, but I'm offering a variation which the mover has accepted.
Nuances, Harvey.
There's
Nothing
nothing
that
is
review the footage.
Right in the rules here.
We'll go a copy of it.
Well, I'm happy to withdraw my variation if that will make
I'm
councillor
just
Jones
wondering
comfortable.
why the rules appear to be
They're not.
but
They're not.
They're not.
Different circumstances.
All right,
Because it was-
you seconded it, or do you?
I have.
You have seconded it, and you actually have pointed out an issue that is, we were using the wording that you read out as the way that we interpreted putting the report, these minutes together. And if there was some confusion there, then we need to tidy that up when we rewrite the terms of reference, which will be around about the same time as we're also looking at voting in a new panel by the end of the year. I might also point out that we already have the CEO providing us a report before December, but of course his KPIs won't actually be written by then, so we're not very much before then. And the review, to bring back, is already being required. Anyway, I don't know whether people actually understand what, this is slightly a new system that Rebecca Hunt from MacArthur's has brought to us. And it's quite consistent across all the councils that they are, MacArthur's are using in their work with councils on CEO appraisals. They have a set of what they call, what we're familiar with, the KPIs. And they see those KPIs as the highly strategic that are not operational. That when we asked the question, as I knew Councillor Piggott would be concerned about the financials not being in there, she said it's not necessary because if he didn't do that, he's not doing his job, right? Because that is the most critical thing that he does in the position that he has. And that is, he gives us a report every month to make sure that finances and budgets are working appropriately. What she said is that we need to have strategic KPIs that were above and beyond the operational and the personal and behavioural issues, which she calls the KRAs, the key result areas, which is not a term that many of us probably are or may not all be familiar with, because I certainly, in my experience, all of that was filled into the KPIs when they were written for me, or I was involved with writing my own. We have done everything that's been required as a committee. We consulted with the CEO, through Rebecca from MacArthur's. Then consultation was made with him when they were amended and taken back to him so that he had the opportunity to have another look at them. We offered the opportunity for every elected member to submit their responses to the KPIs as they were written, and those were meticulously looked at in terms of step by step, almost sentence by sentence, word by word, and hence we've come up with those KPIs. And the KRAs won't be written until later on in the year, and those KRAs are what you're familiar with in relation to what you had to do when you did the probationary report response. And that is they'll be looking at financial management, leadership, interpersonal skills, operational management of the council, all of those things that Councillor Davey mentioned in her forward address. Those things will be incorporated into the KRAs. So there's two levels, the highly strategic and then the operational leadership, interpersonal management. And that's the way that MacArthur's have guided us as to how we produce this document for the CEO to work with. Have I left anything out to any of the other committee members? If you would like to add anything, please raise your hand. And if anyone's got any more questions, obviously you could ask. Yes, councillor.
I guess I'll speak to it. I mean, one of the issues that I feel as a councillor who's not on this committee is that we don't get that report. I don't like the terms of reference where, in my view, it is a whole council issue and it should come to us for decisions. And that's my view. I applied to get on the CEO Performance Committee. I tried to bring, I suppose, to reduce the number and have it come back here. And there was a problem when it was 6 out of 13, I think. So they actually had a majority on the CEO Performance Committee. And then I felt like the rest of us actually didn't get so much of an involvement and a say in it. Likewise, I don't go to meetings as well, which I could. I think I went to one. There was questions about whether I was even allowed to be there or not. I think, yeah, in my view, if we should change the term of reference to come back, so that it's council's final say. We still delegate that job off to the committee because you can't do that all 12 of us have a discussion. But in my view, it should be council's final say. It is one of our key responsibilities and something that I think that I would like to sign off on. And I won't be getting that opportunity to vote for it, which I do consider it bizarre, given I consider it's one of my key roles. But oh well, there you go. That's the way it's going to be. That's fine. That's what it is. Yeah.
But you did have the opportunity to submit any changes
I
and
could submit
suggestions of alterations, as we have done.
No, sorry. So
in
my
the
point is,
past,
to clarify, my point is that as a councillor, responsible for the CEO is my only employee, is the most important person in the city of Burnside as far as I'm concerned, because he's the only person in the city of Burnside that I can actually control. And so setting those responsibilities should come from council.
No, you're not allowed to control, because remember, you're not allowed to instruct.
Oh, we can instruct the CEO as a council, and that's what we should be doing as a council. Is it should come here. We have a reference committee, because otherwise the problem, I think, there comes to be a perception of, well, who is setting this KPIs, who has the ultimate say, who has ultimate authority when it comes to that contract. In my view, it should be council, and I think there is a problem. And I think I need to move a motion on notice to vary it, but I do feel left out of that key element of what it is to be a councillor, which is that administrative side of things. So that's what I like to say, but it is what it is at the moment.
You will also have, of course, the opportunity to look at the KRAs when they are.
Yeah, I don't want to have a look at them. I want to move a motion. I want to accept the report, receive the report, and agree with it. That's what I want to do, and I want it to be my vote that passes it.
Okay.
I don't want minutes. Because it's my job to do it, not minutes.
Okay, the next person is Councillor Dawes.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to support what the Mayor's said. You know, the 4 members on this committee, you know, did look very, very carefully at each of the ideas and suggestions presented. Yeah, we have 2 from Councillor Piggott and also Councillor David. So
And a little one.
I do want to,
and also
again,
Councillor Cornish.
Were they included?
Yeah, I do want to say that that you have delegated this responsibility to the committee, and it's worked very, very hard. I do understand what Councillor Davis is saying here, but in the end, you know, council can say that we don't agree with these KPIs. Go back and have another look. But I do like what Councillor Cornish is saying in that, let's look at the terms of reference and see if we want to change it. But can we I just want to ask Councillor David if she could just make one slight change, variation. During 2020, in the second lot, could we say for 2020, 21 in there? Particularly against key performance indicators and key results areas for 2020, 21. Would you be happy to change that?
Can I? Because I'm talking about this year.
Yeah.
So it's the CEO's first year that I'm interested in the performance measurement of.
Well, the key performance indicators and key result areas we're talking about are for 2020, 21. So that's what
they're based on financial year.
Yes.
So what
are we measuring?
6 months.
Sorry, for his remuneration.
Councillor David needs to be reminded that the 6 months was probation, which we did the assessment, and then we've moved to financial years.
We've done up the probationary, now we've moved into the financial year. So I don't know if that helps you understand. We're actually not going to be doing an appraisal, although we're asking for a report on his progress during the 12 months. And we will see, hopefully see that in the monthly reports that come through anyway. But we don't do a formal appraisal until after June next year. So by December, we'll have the KPIs to add to the KPIs, and you'll have a chance to submit your ideas for those as well and feedback on those. We'll be working with Rebecca Hunt to create those, and they will be based on his position, on the CEO's position description. So they'll directly relate to the position description in the same way as all of those assessable or evaluated 1 to 6 were done for his probationary period, right? So,
Well, I'm under that, with that clarification.
so now understand why.
I'm happy to add 2021. Are you happy with that, Pete?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
Councillor Piggott.
Can I just ask, does the terms of reference of the committee talk about key result areas?
It's not mentioned there's no wording of KPIs, or I don't even think KPIs
I think
are
it talks about
in the
performance
terms of reference. For that,
I think the CEO's contract.
it's about the CEO's contract.
And performance plan.
Right, okay, so
It does,
look,
it does say KPIs in there.
It does,
14.2.1.
talks about KPIs.
Yeah,
Establishing
but not
KPIs,
KRS.
not KRS.
Yes.
But I think that's in there.
Look, I did respond to the committee when it asked for input, and I have a problem, and I still have a problem, because with what's presented from a couple of fronts. I think Councillor Davis is probably right overall. I had to go back and check the terms of reference. I didn't think that was the way it was, but it obviously is in terms of it. It doesn't require the chamber to agree to them, so a slight exercise in futility probably, but and then perhaps arguable, yes. But look, the two problems I have, one is that the KPIs, as I see it, I think you've probably changed their name to key result areas. I think every other time we've looked at KPIs previously, they have been what you are now calling key result areas. So with a brief to make KPIs, you seem to have moved them sideways. You haven't done them yet. And
No,
so
other
you
way
don't
around.
have them.
We've done the KPIs, we haven't done the key result
All right,
areas.
the areas that I would see as KPIs, like financial, organisational, all those sorts of things, the key things, yes, part of his job, but that's what key KPIs are in my view. Okay, I don't share it with McCarthy, I'm not professional. In my view, they are the key things that Chris needs to do in his job to actually succeed in it. They are the core things. And so a list of KPIs that doesn't have some sort of financial interest set you're going to do at some point that will also be judged against, called key result areas. We won't necessarily even see them until we get to the time, and presented KPIs under a new MacArthur definition. And then when you get the new KPIs, the bit I don't like about them is that they are largely not measurable. They are actually quite relatively soft wordings like monitor and respond and those sorts of things, whereas a KPI for mine is something that should be, the guy needs to land budget and not miss by $1, or needs to get a 75% approval rating from his staff survey. That needs to land a Kensington Gardens project on time and within budget. That's what I see as a KPI. And these ones that we've been presented, I don't think hit what I expected them to hit. I do understand where you're going with it, but I feel that we should see them both together, not get one and be on a promise to get the rest, which actually I feel are more important. And second is that they are not particularly measurable. I think a small step in the right direction. I think I could argue that I hit that KPI. Whether I took a second step or not, I think some of those things I have, I've monitored it. I looked at it on a Tuesday morning in February. Done. Tick. And so from that point of view, I feel we've been badly advised in regard to KPIs. Given I don't get a vote on it, I'm happy to accept the minutes.
Okay, just to respond to that, when we were questioning Rebecca Hunt as to how these worked, She said, reminded us that from day to day, the CEO is working from a position description. And the position description is very clear, it's very objective, it's very measurable. And that is what he's working on from a day-to-day perspective. And the KRAs that we'll be putting together later in the year will not distract, they will complement, but they will provide the actual measurement, the 0 to 6 measurement of the specifics of his operational leadership, financial management, strategic planning, all those kind of things. But these are the over and above. It's like, an umbrella above, but these are things that are really essential, high level. This is the way she described it, and we took it on board because she's the expert. We're paying for that expert advice. And it's a different company from who we used last time, but we're taking advice that she was procured through a proper process, or the company was procured through a proper process based on experience working with many councils within local government in South Australia. So we took the advice of that professional in terms of how modern CEO appraisal process is completed. And that's what we worked with. Please, if I've got something incorrect, or I expect one of the other elected members.
Can I speak again or not? Because I've already spoken.
You already spoken.
You've already spoken. Perhaps Councillor Lemon
I'm
or
the only
Councillor
one
Cornish.
that hasn't
He's spoken as well.
Okay.
Councillor Lemon.
So for me, the key result areas, which we haven't actually sorted yet, but we have done something with them in the first place, and that was at the end of the 6-month probationary period. Partly, they were the key results. So this is what was presented to us. So they will be done, my understanding is in October.
Yes.
And again, am I wrong, for a end of year presentation? Am I wrong?
Yes, December.
Yeah, December presentation.
Early
Early December presentation. The thing that everybody seems to have, well, these 3 things are causing some confusion because they're not measurable.
No, it's not those 3 things.
It's true.
It's the bits under them. It's the.
Hang on.
Yeah,
Councillor
it's
Lemon.
true.
She's misquoting me.
They seem to be causing confusion because of their apparent lack of measuring. And it's true, they're not necessarily ones that are going to be measured, but what we're looking at is high level leadership. So if you look at under community, formulate priorities and actions, we will know whether priorities and actions have been formulated to successfully implement our plan. That is actually something that can be measured. A high performance customer service culture, I'm sure there's ways of measuring that, whether that's actually been enhanced and whether it's modelled. Developing a communication strategy, it either gets done or it doesn't. Developing a roadmap, it either gets done or it doesn't. Activating the community to work, well, you can be. That'll be a continuum of success over a period of time. Overseeing the introduction of the plan, well, obviously, as the boss of the organisation, one would expect a bit of a hands-on overseeing. Advising and responding to the implementation of the governance. This is happening already, and if it doesn't happen, we will know if it's not happening. And monitoring our subsidiaries. Are they working properly or not? We get reports on our subsidiaries all the time. So I don't see how what's underneath these isn't seen as something that a high-level leader would be doing, because if any of these things weren't done, if any of these things weren't formulated, enhanced or developed, we'd know immediately and he could be marked down for it. So I actually don't see what the problem is with these, because this makes perfect sense to me from a high-level strategic point of view. And this can be measured. That's really pretty much all I've got to say. This is what you would expect a leader in our organisation with a strategic plan that is very likely to model this stuff to do. You would expect that, as opposed to developing an annual business plan every year. Well, yeah, That's what he's been hired to do.
Councillor Hedgkin.
Thank you, Mayor. I totally agree with Councillor Lemon. State of Victoria, for example, future of local government.
Hang on. Okay.
The future of local government sets out quite clear benchmarks. And the bleeding obvious is that when something's not right, like in an audit committee report, there's an issue there. So I really agree with the simplicity of these KPIs. Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor
I've got
Davey,
a question,
question?
if I may have, through you, Worship. Councillor Lemon has rightly pointed out the importance of these KPIs, but these are still in draft form and we haven't yet finalised with the community consultation in relation to this strategic plan, only finished a couple of weeks ago.
No,
We haven't actually endorsed.
No.
this as a council
The only thing that we actually used were the pillars. We used the structure of the new potential strategic plan. We used the pillars, the community, environment and place, in order to create the KPIs, okay?
So
And
what
so
about this part?
irrespective of whether the plan, I mean, unless the committee come back and say, we don't like those 3 pillars, we want them removed, then really there should not be any antagonism between what is proposed and what is accepted by the community.
And what about this, is that relevant in terms of accountability and informing this process?
Well, it's just it shows people, for those who aren't familiar or don't know the connection, it just gives us, there's the 3 pillars,
I know
community,
that.
environment and place.
But is that relevant in the assessment process?
No.
So can we remove that?
We can.
Because
That's
it's
not
very
a problem.
confusing.
Not a problem at all. It wasn't in the original that we put together, we can take that off, that's not a problem at all. The important things are the 3, 2 and 3, under those 3 pillars. Councillor Hughes.
I have a quick question around this motion as it stands, because essentially what I'm hearing is that people are perhaps that aren't on the CEO committee are unhappy with the terms of reference, but this motion just asks that the CEO committee review its terms of reference without input from the rest of the council. So should this not read that all of the council review the terms of reference as opposed to just that committee?
There would be a council report in relation to that, it would not be done specifically by us.
Council has to approve.
Council has to approve.
Can we have a workshop on that so that we don't spend all evening debating bits and pieces? Because I can see there'll be a group of 4 people or 5 people, how many, come back with their proposed amendments, and then we're just going to debate all of those with the people that aren't on the committee, and we're going to spend 2 hours here.
No, that
debating
won't happen because there's got to be a report.
And
it comes to council where
it's
you will have
like
the
10 o'clock on a 70 page.
And whether or not we want to have a workshop, trying to get 13 people to agree is not exactly easy.
So could we perhaps have a workshop?
Yep.
Can I move a slight variation if it would be accepted by the mover and second that?
Could we just ask the CEO for this
Yes.
to happen rather
Could we
than worrying
just have a
about
workshop on it
changing
so we're
these
not here till
resolution
11:30 debating?
This is.
Look, we've been thinking about that anyway.
So just through Madam Mayor, certainly happy, I don't need the specific direction there.
No.
Happy to
Yeah,
look
okay.
to that
Thank you.
process.
I don't have much else to add, but I perhaps, having sat here Googling KPIs and KRAs, I'm actually not convinced that they're around the wrong way. But I think it's probably perhaps slightly irrelevant, as long as there's some specific measure that we can measure the CEO against.
In the end,
Happy
we
with
are
that.
paying an agency a significant amount of money to provide us with professional guidance, and it's an outside agency. It's not coming from within this council.
Yeah.
It is an outside agency who are supposed to have been providing us with the professional expertise. We've paid for that. We went through a procurement process to select that company to do it. And if they are misguiding us in some way, then that would be a serious problem that would have an impact for the professionalism of their company.
That's what we're worried about.
So I'm a bit worried we're going down that track of actually questioning
I don't think it matters
their
what you
professionality.
what you call them, as long as we have measurable targets. We don't have that yet, that will come.
No, you'll get them.
Yeah.
But he's already got most of them anyway, because they're in his position description.
We
Sorry.
don't know that. It's on here.
No, you've all got a copy of the position description, councillor Davey. You all got a copy of it,
I
and
asked for one and I
you
wasn't-
saw it when you did the evaluation of his probationary
I couldn't
period.
find it when I was searching for tonight.
And you asked for a copy and you got a copy sent to you.
Oh, I didn't see one.
It was more than a week ago. Anyway.
I guess we're expressing some disquiet over this.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Jones.
Can I just say, this is our committee. And we appoint them and we set the terms of reference. And if we're not happy with them, we should sack them.
They are us.
And we should have an election and we should appoint some new committee members.
Yes, which
That's
will
not what this
November.
mission,
That's right.
that's
They're
not
not the
what this
majority.
motion does. And if we think we should have more people, maybe we should have more people, but that's the way to do it, not this, I feel.
Thank you.
That's what I think.
You will have, everyone will have the opportunity to raise the issue, because we do have to change the terms of reference before the committee changes its structure in November, when all committees are up for grabs. And it's already been, we've gone through 2 different phases of this, where 4 people were not enough, then we went to 6 people, then we've gone back to 4 people. And you know what? An even number is not a good, great way to go. And I talked to most of the other councils about how their CEO committees work. They've got an odd number. Some of them have got as few as 3 who do this on behalf of the entire 13. Others have 5. So this, and the whole issue of terms of reference has to be something that this whole council has to determine and has to decide on. After a workshop, that's fine, and it'll have to be before November, because that's when the voting takes place to replace members on this committee. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? Otherwise, I'll go back to Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Mayor Monsai. I accept the recommendations and expertise of MacArthur's. That isn't in question tonight in the development of the format of the CEO's performance plan. However, I believe this process has taken a long time and it's been rather confusing to me, the ordinary council member. The bottom line to me is that council has responsibility for measuring the CEO's performance. And I actually feel, I apologise to Chris on behalf of everybody, having to sit there and listen to us debate all of this. But we've got to get it right. We've made a good appointment. We've had a horrific year. But the bottom line is that we must have a measurable performance plan based on the CEO's position description with KPIs and KRAs. And I look forward to us receiving a report outlining how we've developed all of that in October or November, and then receiving the CEO's update to us in December about progress against all of this. And I accept that we will then move into the financial year and develop and measure against all of the targets. So thank you for all of your input. I'm sorry if I've been a bit confused, but it hasn't all been pulled together. It actually needs to my mind, a full report, pulling it all together to actually outline how it has all progressed. So hopefully tonight, moving this motion and then reviewing the terms of reference, it will have some success and clarity later on. So hopefully you'll support this. Thank you.
All those in favour? Against? Carried. Right, we move through to, there's nothing in 14 or 15, Mayor's report, yes, someone to move. Thank you, Councillor Hughes, seconded Councillor Cornish. All in favour? Thank you. Carried. Reports of members, just if you have anything else to add, please send them along as quickly as you can to Rob. There are a number of pieces of correspondence. Do we have to accept those?
Just one motion.
Just one motion for the lot. Any questions in relation to those? Otherwise, I'll take a motion from Councillor Cornish and seconded by Councillor Hughes. All those in favour? Carried. Any other business? No confidential items, so we'll close the meeting.
Yes.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yes, there is a confidential item. The CEO would like to report on a meeting he had today. Now that requires us to go into confidential mode. Can I seek a motion? Thank you, Councillor Davey, seconded Councillor Davis. We won't read out the whole lengthy thing, but there is a move to go into confidence. So therefore, we have to wait for a few minutes for some people to leave. Oh, we need to get an approval of that, please. Those in favour of going into confidence? Those against? Carried.
Who's in the room?
Did everyone vote?
Sorry?